Now, when you are done installing your server, there are certain things that you are supposed to do. One of the first things that you do is to ensure that the server has an identity. So mostly post installation, you would want to give your server an IP address, and then also the name of the server. You know, when you take a look at most recent Windows operating system installations, you can see that once you are done installing the operating system, the system automatically generates a name for it. Now, you don't want your server to be called something that you can't recollect from mind. So one of the first things that you would want to do is to give the server a name that you can recollect. Probably if the date and time is not right, you set the date and time. And then you also update your server. You update your server before you even think of installing anything on it. You make sure that all the security patches have been installed before you even think of installing any application on it. Because sometimes when you install the server, when you install applications on the server before you want to now patch it, sometimes you may have issues with the application after the updates. So it's very, very important that whenever you set up any server, you update it, get the most recent updates, and then you also disable all the unnecessary services that are not supposed to be there. I'm sure with Server 2022, protocols like TLS version 1.0, TLS version 1.1, and then probably 3DES encryption algorithm are going to be disabled. I'm hoping so. If not, it's one of the things that you have to do, because these protocols and services and algorithms are obsolete. All right, so where were we? Yeah, so I was talking about the things that you need to do after you have after you have finished with the installation of your server. Now, when it comes to the server, one of the things that you need to be conversant with is what we call the server manager. So when it comes to managing Windows Server, the primary tool to use is the Server Manager, and it is used to install, configure, and manage the server roles and then features. It can also be used to manage the local and then remote servers without using remote desktop protocol. So what this means is that if you do proper configuration of your server, you can actually manage multiple servers from one interface without needing to remote into any of them. You can just switch between servers right from the server manager. And that is one cool thing that Microsoft has done. And this is how the server manager looks like. So I think it's best we just jump into the box and then look at, but then let me just walk through what the server manager is capable of doing. So it provides a single tool so that you can perform the following. You can view, add, remove, and modify server roles and features installed on the server. You can also perform common local server management tasks, such as enabling or disabling Windows firewall, remote management, remote desktop, a whole lot of things that you can do there. It can also configure Windows updates and then time zones. So depending on what you are trying to achieve, you can use the server manager to do all that. You can also perform tasks that are associated with the installed roles. So if, for example, I install Active Directory domain services and I want to manage the Active Directory domain service, I will have to do that through the server manager. You can determine the server and the server role status. So whatever role that you have installed on the server manager, let me just jump in straight forward. It's better that way when we are seeing. So whenever you turn on your server, the first thing that comes is going to be the server manager. The first thing that's going to come up is the server manager, and it's going to load. Now Microsoft says they have another tool called the Windows Admin Center. So this is the server manager, ladies and gentlemen. So when you open your server, those who are system administrators, they are very familiar with this already, that this is how you manage your server. So at the top here, you have the location where you are within the server manager. So currently we are in the server manager's dashboard. Now on the left pane, we have the local server. So if you want to manage or configure this particular server that you are on, you click on local server, and then it brings you information on the local server. It brings you information on the local server. So as you can see, this server that we are on, the computer name is Win, like that. Then we have things like the work group. So it's a server, and by default, it's in a work group called work group. The Windows firewall is enabled, remote management is enabled, but remote desktop is disabled. And then we also have NIC teaming. NIC teaming allows you to have multiple network adapters that can be put together to act as if it is one network adapter for more powerful throughput, and then also for redundancy purposes. Then we have the Ethernet information, which gives you information about the IP configuration. Now, one of the first things that we are going to do is that we are going to change the name of the computer. And after changing the name of the computer, we will also set the IP address. Under no circumstances, the server is supposed to have a dynamic address. The server is supposed to have a static IP address. But as it stands now, this server has an IP address. This server has an IP address that is issued by a DHCP. And so we need to look at the settings and then give it a static IP address. This is one of the things that we are going to do. Then we also have all servers. And then down here, you can have the events. So if any events have transpired on the server, you get to see which events have transpired. And then the services that are running on the server, you also get to see which services are running on the server. And then there's the best practice analyzer to see whether there are any errors whatsoever in the CPU utilization, and all these other things can be found here. Then we have the all servers. So if you have other servers, you get to see information about each of the servers right from here. You get to see information on each of the servers right from here. And as we go along the way, when we install other roles, any role that we install will also automatically be added to the list here. So by default, even if you have not done anything on the server, once the server is set up, automatically it is a file server. Once the server is set up, automatically it is a file server. So you can use it to host and manage your files within the network environment. You can use it to host and manage the files within your network environment. Any question, please? All right. So if there is no question, let's proceed.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
What's the difference between remote management and remote desktop? I just want to find out.
Remote management is the entire suite of activities that you can do. So you can talk about the RSAT and then all the other things. But then remote desktop is a protocol or a service that allows someone to remote into your system. Are we okay? So we can say that remote desktop is a subset of remote management, or is one of the tools or the things that you can use to do remote management. Very good.
Yeah, yes.
All right. Prince Chumesi Ankra, Superbet.
Yeah, Superbet.
Okay. All right, Charlie. Next time we will mature that our game part.
W mission server. Mission server. Mission networking.
Oh, okay. All right, Charlie. You are welcome. All right, so I want us to go ahead and then change the name of the computer. But before we do, one thing about system administration is that if you don't plan, you may end up messing up the environment if you don't plan. So if you are going to pick up system administration, you need to make sure that everything that you do, you plan. It's very, very, very important. So I want us to quickly plan what we are going to do. Oh yeah, we'll share the slide afterwards. Or this one to you, crack it. All right. So what are we looking for? Yeah, so I want us to quickly plan our environment, okay? So that so I'm just going to open the PowerPoint again and then put in a blank slide. I could have just put it in and then come and show you, but then I want us to at least know it so that you do it yourself in the future. So I'm going to put in a picture, downloads or documents, Windows Server. Okay, so we have this Windows Server which we have installed. Are we okay? And text box. We want to call it, or the name is DC1. DC1. So this is the name of our server as we have it. All right. So because the name is DC1, we will also change the name in the system to DC1. And in planning our class, I want us to find a name for our organization. So what do we call our organization? What do we call our company? Please, I want you to give us a name.
Cobra.
Please, let's be realistic.
Louis
New
and Co.
consult. No. Okay, I think we can take Maverick. We can take Maverick. So call it Maverick Incorporated. Are we okay? So our company name will be Maverick Incorporated. Oh, really? Maverick Incorporated. So this is our business name. This is our business name. And we have a server. We have a server called DC1. Okay. Now on this DC1, we are going to install these roles on it. We are going to install these roles on it. Now, I won't put a specific IP address there because we may all have different IP addresses. If we were doing private network for only the virtual machines, then we could have specified a particular IP address for it. But because we are going to be using the public IP, the IP we'll get from our network, we are not going to put a specific IP because I don't know what IP your systems have given you. Is that clear? So we are going to give this system a role called ADDS. I will explain it later on. ADDS. And then I also give it DNS. So these are the two main roles we are going to give it, because ADDS and then DNS, they go hand in hand. If going forward, anything else comes up and we need it, we will add it. Is that clear? All right. So now that we have this
Yeah.
nine up here, and in sets, let me just add a shape here. This nine shape, which would be our switch. Are we okay? Which would be our switch. Let's give it a nice color as this one. And then let's add a cable that connects it to this one. Let's increase the cable size a bit, because this is like that. Let's then send this one back. Bring this one forward and then bring this one forward. Bring forward. There are better tools you can use to do this, like Microsoft Visio. Are we okay? You can use Visio to do this, but just for the sake of this, let's maintain this. So we are working with this server now. As and when we introduce other things, we will update the diagram. So for now, this is our diagram. All right. So we come in here, first things first, we want to change the name of the computer. So in the server manager, we go to local server, and then you click on the computer name. Then you go to change. So we just change to DC1. That's all. And then you click OK. So we'll be required to restart the system. We'll be required to restart the system. So when it's done restarting, then we will work on the networking aspect, and then we'll talk about server roles and features. So how many of us have been able to build the lab and then you are following with the class?
Louis, some of us, we are now installing the server.
Yeah, I understand. You know, from experience, 8 years experience teaching this stuff in Gempa, what I can say is we will finish the 1 month and people. And these things are fun if you actually practice it. All right, so I think my system is done restarting. So I just log in.
Lou,
Yeah.
if you are when you change the server name, does it restart your system as in your computer or the server itself? Because
It
if
will
it's the server,
restart the
I think.
virtual machine, not your physical machine. If it is restarting your
okay.
physical machine, it means you are changing your physical machine's name.
Okay. No, I
So
mean
please
in
be
an
careful there.
event when the server is mounted on your, I mean the server is mounted on your machine and not a VMware.
I don't get you. Like, it means you mean that your main operating system is the server,
Yeah.
right? And so
Yeah.
it will restart the physical machine.
Okay. I get you.
Are we okay? All right. So now let's go to the other aspects of the server manager. Now, any role that you install in the server automatically will have a tile like this created for it. So as I mentioned earlier on, the server is a file server. So automatically has a tile for it. Then you also get to see whether there are some issues. If some services are not running, you can get to see it straightforward here, and then you can address them. So for example, after restarting the system, it says that 5 services are not running. Now, mostly this occurs when some services are configured to be delayed. So as you can see, some of the services here have been configured to be delayed. That is why they are not currently running. This means that these services will have to wait until the system is fully restarted before they can run. So this is the reason why these ones are not running, but I'm sure that after some time they'll be okay, or you can manually decide to start them if you want to. And this one is the update service for Microsoft Edge. Are we okay? So I'm going to close this and I'm going to refresh. So there's a refresh tab here. Mostly when you make some changes, sometimes they don't just reflect immediately in the server manager. You may need to refresh the server manager before some of these things may take effect. So you see that when I refreshed, the services have moved from 5 to 1. And I'm sure the one left is the Edge updates. I don't really need to be concerned with this, but then you can just right click and start the service. That one is also there if you don't want to see red. I mean, in this Windows environment, red is danger and it's not good. And then when you go to the event also, you can see that there's an event. And this happened because when I shut down the machine, I didn't give a reason why I was shutting down the system. So this is the reason why this power thing is here. So when you properly shut down your virtual machine, you are not going to see this power thing here. So this one also, you can decide to hide the alert if you are okay with whatever the event is, and it doesn't really require any further actions from you. All right, so with all this, let's go back to the local server. The next thing I said we want to change is the network configuration. So we'll go to the Ethernet 0, and then just click on the IP version 4. And then you double click this, you go to the properties. Then you select Internet Protocol version 4. You go to properties. So as it stands now, it's using dynamic IP, which means it's using the DHCP assigned IP. I think I have to go back and then I'll go to details and look at what I have been assigned for IP. Then I'll give the same thing as a static address. I'll give the same thing as a static address. So let me open Notepad. Again, if you have any questions, please prompt.
Louis, please, we would like you to go back a little to start from the Ethernet 0 so we can get it. Some of us are using a slower machine.
Hey, Joshua.
Yes, boss.
I just left the office with you. I know the machine you use. It's not okay. So when you come to Ethernet, it's just assigning an IP address. You can actually go to the traditional way we've been doing on our normal Windows, and then open network and internet settings. It's the same thing, just that we are doing everything from within the server manager. But it's no different from coming here and then saying what change adapter options. It takes you to the same place. It's just the same thing there. All right. So Ethernet 0, you click on it. Then you right click here, you go to, let's go to status first, and then go to the details. So when you come to the details, we need to put this information somewhere because we want to assign this same information as static IP for our virtual machine. So I'm going to do 192.168. Let me give it an IP on my actual network and see something. 0. Let's say 20. 0.20 and then 255.255.255.0. I believe these are not new to us because yesterday we spent some time talking about IP addresses. So I want to try giving it an IP directly on my network and see how it will fare. If I get network access, then we don't have to copy whatever VM adapter we've gotten. So I'm going to do that now. So I'll go to properties and then Internet Protocol version 4, go to properties. So I want to use the following IP address. I don't want to use the DHCP configured address. I want to configure a static IP. So I'll do 192.168.0. 20. Please don't use this if your the network you have at home is not giving the same IP. Then I'll need a gateway. I will need a gateway. Let me pick gateway information from my physical machine. Okay, the gateway is .1. The gateway is .1. I hope this is not new to anyone. Now, when it comes to network configuration, when you're assigning IP address, you need the IP address and the subnet mask. But if you want the device to communicate with other devices on other networks, then you need to provide gateway and then DNS information. So the gateway is the IP address that the system will use to communicate outside your network. So in this case, I'll go with 192.1. 192.168.0.1. Then the DNS. Now, going forward, when I'm done configuring this server, I would want to make it a DNS server. So I will say that it should be 192.168.0.20, the same IP. But because I want it to communicate on the internet also, I'll give it 8.8.8.8. 8.8.8.8 is a public DNS, which is the Google DNS. So it can be used to resolve names. Now, for those of us who don't know what DNS is, DNS stands for domain name service or domain name server or domain name system. And what it does is that it allows you to resolve names to IP addresses. So for example, when I type www.facebook.com, that is the name of a computer somewhere on the internet. That computer also has an IP address. So the DNS contains a database of domain names and then their IP addresses. So I'm putting these IPs in there and then I'll click OK. And then I will close. So let's give it a little time. I think it still has internet connection. So it means that we are good. Because when I go to details, yeah, it still has internet connection. So I think we are good. Let me open the command prompt and then ping let me ping my gateway 192.168.0.1. Yeah. It is timing out. I think this will work better if we change the adapter to bridged. If I change my adapter to bridged, then this configuration will work. If I change my network adapter settings to don't touch yours, okay? But let me come here, go to settings and switch from the NAT to bridged. And then click OK. If I should switch to bridged, I think that should be fine. So it's now establishing the connection. So let's give it a little time and then see. If not, we'll just go back and then duplicate the IP address that we got from the system. No network access and then no internet access. This is dangerous. So what we'll do is that we'll go back and then I'm coming. There's one more thing I had to take. Let me see. VM settings. Bridged, and then let's replicate the connection state of the physical machine. Someone found this. Someone left a message. Baby. Okay, so let me go back here and then let's just check. It still says unidentified network. Details, default gateway is this is okay. I'm coming. Let's properties. So I want to change this to 1. Okay, this to the 20, all right, and then this to 192.168.0.1. 192.168.0.1. 192.168.0.1. And then hit OK. Yes, what's up? VM. Let me restart the VM. Sometimes, if not, we'll just switch to the NAT and then use the IPs we got from the NAT. And sometimes when you are shutting down, you have to give the reason why you are shutting down, and then you shut down. No. Yeah. Any questions so far? I think it still didn't come. So we'll switch to the NAT and then use the properties of the NAT connection. Okay, so open network. Change adapter options. First have to come here, VM, and then switch to the NAT. Settings. I think I remember why I liked Hyper-V. Because with Hyper-V, it was easy to manipulate these things. So I was going to switch back to the property. So I'm just going to switch back to the dynamic, get an IP, and then we will use that IP. All right, so Notepad. The properties, cancel details. So 19.128, and then gateways 19.2, and the DNS is 19.2. 19.2. So the DNS would be 19.128 and then 19.2. All right. So properties, this properties, 192.168.19.128, 192.168.19.2, 192.168.19.128, and 192.168.19.2. And then we'll click OK, close and close. Okay, yes, so it worked. Now we have network connection, so we are good. And I think that, let me see if I can ping 192.168.19.0.1. Yes, I'm able to reach my router. So that is okay. So when you are doing your configuration, just check the IPs that you got for the NAT and then set those as static IP for your virtual machine and set those as static for your virtual machine. All right, so now our server has an IP. Our server has an IP, and so we are good to go. So the other tabs that we have the notification tab here, which alerts you if anything requires your attention. It alerts you if anything requires your attention. Then we have the manage. So you use the manage to add rows and features. You can use the manage to add rows and features. You can also use it to remove rows. You can use it to remove rows. You can use it to add servers, and you can use it to create server groups. Then when it comes to the tools, this is where you do your work. So any role that you install that requires managing is going to be found under the tools. So you can manage your roles as you install them under the tools. You can use the view to either increase the font size or the way things look here. And then you can use the help to get more information about the server and then the server manager. Okay. So back here. So once you install the server, by definition, we say that a server is any system that performs a specific function on a network. So you need to give the server a purpose. This is where the server roles come in. You need to give the server a purpose. This is where the server roles comes in. So when we say a server role, this is basically a set of software programs that perform a specific function as a network service for multiple users. So if I want what we are going to do, we want this server to serve as our identity server. This server should be able to manage users and then resources on the network. So we will install a role that will allow us to be able to do that. If we want the server to resolve names, we install DNS. We want the server to manage IP addresses, we install DHCP. We want the server to host the website, we install IIS or web services. We want the server to be used as a VPN server, we install the remote routing and remote access service, or we can install direct access depending on which one you are trying to implement. So there are so many roles on the server. You want the server to become a certificate authority. We have a role called the Active Directory Certificate Services that you can install. Now, for any role to work, there are sub roles called role services that actually provide the functionality of the roles. So when you are installing a role, you are actually installing a certain number of role services that you can use. Then we have what we call feature. So features are not part of a role, but they enhance the capability of the role. For example, if we take a role like, let's say, DHCP, we can add a feature called clustering to it so that we can have multiple DHCP servers performing the same function. We can add a feature called Group Policy Manager to augment the capability of Active Directory. So it all depends on the goal, what you are trying to achieve. Some roles comes with the feature, and we are very fortunate because in the olden days, during the days of Server 2003, and I think Server 2008, when you are installing a role, you have to know the role services and the features that it requires, and then you have to install them manually. But now with from Server 2012 upwards, when you install any role, automatically Microsoft selects the features that they require and then also install them for you so that you don't have to go back to install those roles or features. So when we are installing roles, there is what we call the adding role features. And this is basically a server that or a service that allows you to add roles and features. And when you are adding roles, there is a wizard that comes and then you do it. So I think we should just go straight for it. Forget this grammar. Let's go straight for look at how to add roles, and then we'll come and talk about the elephant in the room. So when you want to add roles and features, there are a couple of ways you can do that. I have not talked about PowerShell because I don't want to scare anybody here. All these things we are doing, there's a very nice gentleman here called Windows PowerShell that you can actually also use to do everything that we have been doing. So there are so many roles that you can, there are a lot of things. Oh, I've forgotten this script. But then everything that we are doing from adding rows and features to whatever it is, you can actually do it from the server using the PowerShell. I don't want to scare anybody here this evening, so let's go with the graphical user interface. But if it becomes necessary for us to play with the PowerShell, we will come and then play with the PowerShell. Are we okay? All right. But why did they change the blue background? The blue background was nicer. So you can add rows and features here. You can also come to manage and also add rows and features from here. So we'll click add rows and then features. And then it says that this wizard helps you to add rows and features and so on and so forth. If you want to remove rows and features, there's another option. When you come to the same manage, you can remove rows and features from there. So before you continue, verify that the following tasks have been configured. The first thing is that the administrator account has a strong password. Yes, it has a strong password. If it did not have a strong password, we would not have been able to log in the first place. I wouldn't say we have a strong password. We have a complex password, because sometimes you may have a complex password, but it may not be strong enough. It will take someone some few minutes to crack the password, depending on the strength of the password. Then the network settings such as static IP address are configured. So like I mentioned earlier on, servers are supposed to have static IP addresses, and we have done that. The only thing we have not done is we have not updated the server. The only thing that we have not done is we have not updated the server, because we don't have the luxury to get all those updates. But then for the lab environment, this is okay for us to continue. So we'll click next. Then we have the role-based or feature-based installation. Mostly this is what you are going to be using. But in the event where you have virtual machines that you want to push the role directly to those virtual machines, then you may select the second option there. So for example, let's say you are using this server to manage a lot of virtual machines that you don't connect directly to. Then you can use this second option to do the installation for those systems. So we'll maintain the role-based or feature-based installation, and then we'll click next. So if we had multiple systems here, and again, like I said, you can use this server manager to manage a lot of servers. So we can actually do the installation onto different servers right from this very server that we are on. Then we have select the server from the pool. So this is our server. Or if we were doing the installation onto a virtual hard disk, then we will select the virtual hard disk and then push the installation onto the virtual hard disk. But here we are doing it onto a server. So we select the server from the pool. Then we click next. So once you click next, these are the roles that you can give to a server. And Microsoft has been very kind. There is a brief description of each of the roles here. So we have the Active Directory Certificate Services, which is used to create certification authorities. We have the Active Directory Domain Services, which we are going to install, which allows us to set up our identity system and then configure and manage resources on our network. So it stores information about objects on the network and makes this information available to users and network administrators. Then we have the Active Directory Federation Services, which basically provides a simplified identity federation and web single sign-on capabilities. Basically, if you have multiple platforms and you want to use a single credential to authenticate through them, you have to do federation services so that at the end of the day, one credential can be used to authenticate amongst them. Let me use a common example. You know that sometimes when you go to some websites, they tell you to log in with Google, some tells you to log in with Facebook, some tells you to log in with Microsoft. So at the end of the day, even though they may not directly be related to the platform that you are logging on, they have some form of federated authentication mechanism somewhere that ensures that you can access that interface from using the credential that you already have on another platform. Then we have the lightweight directory access services, which is used to basically configure the lightweight protocol that allows you to query the directory service. And there are so many other services here. at your own time, you can go through them. If, for example, you want to do virtualization, there is the Hyper-V server there, there's the DHCP, there's the DNS. If you want to set up a health monitoring server to monitor the health of your systems, you have the health attestation server that you can also enable. So there are so many of them that you can install. But you don't just go about installing roles because the roles exist or the roles are there. You need to install the role based on the need of the organization. So every organization has a lot of roles that they have installed, and these are all based on the needs of the organization. So ladies and gentlemen, it's 8. We'll go up to 8:30 and then we'll close this. I just want to get the message of Active Directory through to us, and then we will pause the session. So you may have heard of Active Directory. So if you want to understand Active Directory, you first need to understand what a directory service is. Those of us that are a bit old, I remember back in the days when we had landlines at home, they will also print for you a directory, which is a list of all the people with landlines in there. So if you're looking for someone's number, you can open your directory and then you can get it. That is some form of directory. Are we okay? Now, Active Directory or a directory service stores, organize, and provide access in a directory. You can, if you want to be lazy, you can say a database. So directory services are used for locating, managing, administering, and organizing common items and network resources such as volumes. Volumes here, we are talking about storage. Are we okay? We're talking about storage. When we take storage, we have the hard drive, and on a hard drive, we create what we call volume. The volume is the space that you create on it. The 1 gig, the 1 terabyte, or whatever storage size you may have, that is the volume or the partition that you create on a physical hard disk. Then you may have folders, you may have files, printers, users, groups, devices, and so on and so forth. One popular directory service that is used by many organizations is the Active Directory, which is from Microsoft. So, straightforward, I would say Active Directory is a database. And to use or manage Active Directory, we use what we call the Active Directory Domain Services. And it is basically a directory service that does the following. It stores information about the identities of users, computers, and then services. So if you are looking for a central way to manage all your users, to manage all your departments, to manage all your services, to manage all your computers, you do it using the Active Directory. It also provides authentication for users and computers. Once the users are created on the central system, these users are also managed through that central system. So whenever anyone wants to log onto the network, automatically that user will have to go through the Active Directory. Please, does this make sense? Do you get what I am saying? Hello?
Yeah, we are following.
Yeah.
All right. So what I'm saying is that we are setting up this system here. Are we okay? And then on this system, it is connected to, let's say, some switch here. And then there are some computers connecting to it. Now, in a peer-to-peer environment, you create users directly on the computers. Are we okay? And so when the user wants to log in, the user's information is checked on the computer. But when it comes to what we are about to do, we are going to create all the users on this system. Are we okay? We are going to create all the users on this system. All the users are going to be on this system. Then we will give the accounts to the people. So let's say we have this guy here. So we create his account on this system here, which in the future will be known as DC or domain controller. So when we create his account here, we give him the username and password. When he wants to log in, when he enters the username and password, the system will send the username and password to the system and say that, okay, this user here is asking to log in. He says his name is Luis, his password is Kofi. do you have this name called Luis and password in your database? Then the system will check if the username and password is there. If the username and password is there, then the system will reply and then allow the user to what? Connect. That is how they communicate. So it provides authentication. It provides authentication for users and computers. It also provides authorization for users and computers to access the network resources. Now, once the user is authenticated, the username and password is verified. The username and password is verified. The next thing is that the system will now check what the person is allowed to access. Which folders can the person access? That is where authorization takes place. So the person is in a group called IT. IT people, which folders do they have access to? What time can they log in? And then all those things are now what? Checked against the authorization process. All right. Now, to best understand Active Directory, network went off again. Okay, so as I was saying, to best understand Active Directory, you need to understand the lightweight directory access protocol. Basically, this is the protocol that allows users to query the Active Directory. So whatever request is coming from the user is sent through the lightweight directory access protocol, and then the protocol will check and then return the response to the user. Then the other thing that you need to get is what we call Kerberos. Now, let me explain Kerberos more. And Kerberos is one of the important things to grasp when it comes to user identity, whether it is in Windows environment or Linux environment or wherever you may find yourself, because it is a widely used protocol when it comes to authentication. And even those of you that works as SOC analyst and all that, you realize that whenever there are authentication issues, one of the protocols that you are looking at is Kerberos. You either look for Kerberos or NTLM with issues related to authentication. So you may see Kerberos authentication or pre-authentication failure. It means that one of the activities that is supposed to happen for an authentication to occur has failed. So let me just quickly use this opportunity to explain what Kerberos is. Now, for Kerberos to work, there are three key elements in there. There are three key elements in there. We have what we call the KDC. We have the KDC. Then we have the access. We have the client, the KDC, and then the access server. Access server, and then we have the client. Are we okay? So mostly what is going to happen is this: for authentication to occur, the first thing that happens is that the user presents credentials. Are we okay? And then, so this is the KDC. This is the KDC, and then this is the client. So the user presents credential when you enter your username and password. Are we okay? Then the KDC will respond with something we call TGT, and then it will add what we call a session key to it. The TGT stands for ticket granted ticket, which basically means that the system is going to issue a ticket and then use that ticket. The system is going to use this ticket to request for another ticket. So the client will again present the TGT, including the session key, to the KDC and say that I am ready to connect. Then the KDC will verify the ticket granting ticket and then the session key to see whether it is valid. If it is valid, the KDC will now issue another ticket known as TGS, ticket granting service, to this system. And then this system will use this ticket granting service to go to the access server. So whenever the user, let's say you have logged on to your network and then you want to access the file server in the office, it is the TGS that your computer will present to the file server that have been authenticated. And so let me access this file server. So you notice that when you your machine, you are accessing the file server, you don't have to enter username and password again. When you are accessing anything, unless maybe there's an application that requires you to provide credential. If not, you don't enter another credential to access any resource on the network again, because you already have authenticated to the KDC, which may be your Active Directory, and then your system has been issued a ticket granting service, which is a ticket that allows the system to get access to what? A service. So basically, this is what happens when you log onto your machine. Then there's another important protocol, NTLM. So besides Kerberos, there's also NTLM, New Technology Land Manager. Basically, this works within the local environment when you are not on the domain. So you notice that when you bring your office machine home and you log in, you are still able to log in because your credential is cached. At that point, it is not Kerberos that is managing it. It is the NTLM that is managing it. But once you connect to the domain, then Kerberos kicks in. So whatever you enter has to be sent to the domain controller to verify, and then the process goes on like that. So basically, if you hear Kerberos anywhere or you see Kerberos anywhere, it is the authentication server for most enterprise environments. Authentication protocol for most enterprise environments that allows users to be securely authenticated on the network. And this is the process that goes on. So if maybe let's say you work in a SOC and then you see an alert that says Kerberos pre-authentication failure, it could be that the username or the password is wrong, depending on what happened there. Or it could be that the session took so long to establish a connection, and so the user is failing authentication. These are some of the things that mostly the people in the SOC look out for when they are checking for issues related to logons. Please, is the case of Kerberos clear?
Yeah.
It is.
Can I proceed?
Yes, sir.
All right. But one thing is that you need to know is that you don't need to worry yourself too much about this because it's not something you interact with. This is programmed, it's there, it's working, but you need to understand that it is there and that this is how it works. That's not something that you will configure or do anything about it. Okay, so back to the slide. Okay, and then like I mentioned also, Active Directory allows you to do what we call single sign-on. Single sign-on means that once you log onto the system, you don't have to log on when you are accessing other resources on the network. Your phone. Okay, now let's look at the basic structure of Active Directory. Now, it actually starts from we have the logical and then we have the physical components. Let me clear this annotation. How do I clear you? All right, good. So it has the logical. The logical are the things that you configure using the software. And then we have the physical. So one of the first components of Active Directory is what we call the organizational unit. Now, organizational unit is a container in a domain that allows you to organize and group resources for easier administration. And this is one of the things that if as an administrator you fail to utilize, you'll be very hot. You see, one thing about Active Directory is that because it is the identity system, all other tools feed into it. For example, your antivirus is going to feed into your Active Directory. So if your Active Directory is not well organized, even managing deployment of enterprise antiviruses becomes a problem, because you may want to have different policies in the antivirus for the different people in different departments. But if you don't organize the AD properly, you have issues with your antivirus. If you are using a NAC system, you are going to have issues managing the NAC. Even if you have an EDR system, you are going to have issues with managing some of these things. So it's very, very important that your AD is properly organized. Then the next thing we have is domain. The next thing we have is domain. So when we say a domain is a collection of computers, are we okay, that share a common directory database. So what that means is that if you have a lot of computers connected on a network that are being controlled by one domain controller, then you have what we call a domain. Then we have what we call the tree. The tree is a collection of domains that share a common what? Namespace. So for example, if we have, let's say, google.com, that is a domain. Then we may have mail.google.com, translate.google.com, whatever.google.com. These are all what? Trees. They share a common namespace. They all have their google.com in there. Then we have what we call the forest. The forest is a collection of trees that share a common, we normally say global catalog server, that share a common global catalog server. Now, let me explain what this is. Let me explain what this is. And when you get this, you go places, you go far. Okay. Let's say I have, mostly in Windows environment, we represent domains with triangles. Are we okay? So we may have this here, this domain, and then we can call this, let's say, we may call this maverick.local. This is actually going to be our domain. Because of the fact that we are connecting to the internet, we don't want it to interfere with any this thing there. Now, within the Maverick domain, we may decide to open another subsidiary, or let me use a realistic example so that it will become easier for us to get it. Are we okay? Let me use a realistic example to explain it. Once we are done, then we can play with the Maverick one. So let's take, for example, let's use Microsoft. So, let me clear everything and then where's the eraser? All right, good. So let me use Microsoft. So we have this as Microsoft. Then Microsoft builds another subsidiary. Are we okay? Called, there's another domain here. And then let's say there's another one here. So this one here is called msn.com. Are we okay? And then we may have Xbox or office.com. This. Are we okay? Now these are all under Microsoft, but then they have their different okay, so that we will pause it, because if you are tired and then you are learning MCOM. And because it is connected, I lost my diagrams. Okay, so back here again. We have my So we have Microsoft, and then the other one was MSN, right? And then this one is Office. Okay, so now when you take Office, Office may have other subsidiaries. Are we okay? Office may have other subsidiaries. They may have let's say login.office.com. This may be one of their things. They may have another one, let's say 365.office.com. Are we okay? MSN may have news.msn.com. Then they may have another one like, let's say, maybe sports.msn.com. When it comes to Microsoft itself, they may have learning.microsoft.com. They may have mcp.microsoft.com. They may have partner. They may have partner.microsoft.com. They may even have their parents, this thing here, live.com. They may have live.com here. Are we okay? Now, each of these is a different tree. Are we okay? So each of these is a different tree. Each of these is a different tree. Now, within each tree, you may have domains. So this is a domain within this Microsoft tree. This is a domain within this Microsoft tree. This is a domain within this Microsoft tree. This is a domain within the Office tree. This is a domain within the Office tree, a domain within the Office tree. This is a domain within the MSN tree domain, and then all that. But all these are linked together. Are we okay? All these are what? Linked together. And once you have one account, you can use it to access any of these, because down there, they all share a common directory database. This is known as what we call the global catalog server. So mostly when you are doing your configurations, the first thing you create is a forest. And if whatever name you choose as your forest name also becomes the first domain name, then the next things you create under them becomes your subdomains. Or you can decide to create a subdomain, or you can create a tree domain. If you are creating a subdomain, what it means is that it will, if it is under Microsoft, it will have .microsoft.com in it. But if it is a tree domain, it may have a different domain name, but it will still report to the main Microsoft domain. Please, is this clear? Am I making sense?
Yeah.
No, I want everyone to
Oh,
tell me
yes,
what
you're
they
making
feel. If you
sense.
don't, so you understand.
Yeah.
Not hearing the women. So, dear women, let me hear your voice or see your handwriting. All right. So basically, when we say domain and then all those things, this is what it means. Are we okay? This is what it means. So you have a domain, you have a tree, you have a forest. It depends on the circle or how far it is going. Let's even if you want to use entities, we can use banks. We have a bank, let's say called EcoBank. EcoBank can have branches in Accra. So they may create Accra as a forest or as a tree. And then in Accra, they'll have maybe madina.accra.ecobank.com. Like that. That is Accra. When they go to Kumasi, Kumasi will also have its tree, but they all report to the parent organization known as the ecobank.com. So basically, that is what these things mean. It's already 8:30. Can we close, or you want us to finish the installation?
Yes, let's close.
All right, so I think we'll pause here. God willing, tomorrow we'll pick up from here and then do the installation and see how these things actually look on the system. Once we have the understanding, the installation doesn't take long. Some few minutes is done. Okay? The understanding is the most important thing.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, guys. So have a good evening.
And we'll be waiting for the recording too.